slow. Awesome. We are live. You are live. We got confirmation. Awesome. How is everyone on this last Monday of July? Oh my gosh, it's going to be
Right?
August.
It
How are you,
is. And
darling?
I'm good.
Let's
It's
get
hot.
Instagram.
Yep, Instagram is starting up here. Hi, Instagram. And welcome everyone. Welcome to YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, 3 Facebook pages, 2 of our Instagrams. And I think I got everything again, except also this will be uploaded later to iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. So welcome everyone.
Welcome, dear friends. Welcome, Instagram. I see you over there joining. So welcome. It's just a Monday night chat and don't necessarily have really any specific topic for tonight. So if you got questions, we can do a Q&A or whatever is on your heart. Let us know. Speaking of hearts, this was your anniversary this weekend. How'd that go?
It was good. We have been married 23 years Saturday.
Congrats.
And thank you. I had a low-key weekend. We went and got barbecue on Saturday. Uh, and we found a little local joint that I'll tell you what makes some darn good, consistent, delicious barbecue. Like, I'm not a big turkey person, and their smoked turkey is off the chain delicious. Of course, I don't use the barbecue sauce on it. And we always get a little extra to bring home to make it just easy on another night. But so we got done eating barbecue and we were kind of waiting for the temperature for it to get later in the evening. And we went back out on our property and I climbed on the tractor and started mowing. And he was clearing some underbrush off around. We have a big pond that we're trying to get cleared around the one side where we're eventually going to put our house on that side. So, you know what? I mean, I thought, what a perfect way to spend our anniversary was on the property doing exactly what we wanted to do. And I had posted on social media about, romance. And it was like, sounds kind of weird, but that was romantic to me because that's been a lot of years of getting us to the point where we could buy the property. And so, yeah, it was kind of neat.
Well, and just the fact of at this point being able to start and build that dream, right? Building that land. And I know we talked with, well, you talked with, we didn't. You guys did at Hack Your Health in regards of how to develop this land and kind of what some of your dreams and your goals were with it. So just to see that igniting, I guess, and building and the passion that you guys now have for creating this regenerative land that you've got.
Yeah, we it is funny, we have a trail camera out on the property, and we have kind of funny a wooded area. We have nicknamed it the Creepy Woods because it is so dense that you can't see into it. So we've dubbed it the Creepy Woods, and we set the camera up outside that area, and we've seen 2 bucks, an 8-point buck and a 6-point buck. We've seen a mama and her little spotted fawn following her. We've seen a coyote, and we've seen the tracks for the wild hogs, but we actually have confirmation there was a mama and her 2 babies, hogs, that we've caught now on the camera. We caught a family of raccoons out there. love to watch the wildlife on this camera that we have. Um, and one of the things I did when I was in Indiana was when we went to the Amish town. They had a building set outside another building. It was a greenhouse. And so I took some pretty extensive pictures of it. And eventually I would like to have a greenhouse when we eventually start building. And so I can grow things without the wildlife eating it.
Yeah, for sure. And I get hello, Miss Sly. I see you there. Yeah, I get that. Being, where we're at with fields all around us and the wildlife passing through um our acreage here, you have whether I have plants up on my deck or that's what I went to was, well, instead of doing a garden because everything always eats the garden off, I'll put them in pots, especially now that I do my seasonal eating, because if I can grow them in pots, then we know that it's in season, right? um and so I did that, but between the grasshoppers and the rabbits and everything else eating them, even on my deck, it's like I'm gonna have to end up and do a greenhouse. And I know you and I talked about creating um one of my outbuildings into like my coaching shed or my coach's coop, right? And it used to be an old run outside of that. And I had, this envision that I would create it into a greenhouse and just all sorts of plants because I love my plants. Anyone that has ever seen me, downstairs in my house, I've got all sorts of plants and I love my plants. I mean, obviously I got them, stacked here behind me too, but yeah, it's just that aspect of being able to grow your own food
Mhm.
or raise, quote, raise, right? Whether you convert your land that you have into being able to house animals and create, an actual farm or ranch out of it, but also the wildlife that pass through.
Absolutely. I know when I was visiting my parents in Indiana, my dad had tomatoes growing in pots. And boy, I was watching them close the first week. I'm like, come on, let's get some. Well, I did the last day that I was leaving. That morning, I was able to eat a tomato that was grown out of my dad's, pot. Um, and he, if you've never eaten fresh tomato that was grown and I mean, like grown in a pot or on your property, or somebody's given you homegrown tomatoes, they taste completely different than what you buy in the grocery store.
Absolutely. This weekend, well, we talk within the BNC community a lot of, if you are gonna, we're not a exclusive dietary camp community, right? We don't just do carnivore, we don't just do keto. We have anywhere from, paleo and beyond. And we talk a lot in regards of the carbs that we're consuming those in a seasonal fashion. And we went to farmers market. Now, it's been a while since my husband's ever been to a farmers market. And he was amazed because the farmers market we went to, it also, I think I counted 3, 4 if I count the poultry one. But there were 4 different vendors there that were actually selling the meat that they've raised on their ranch.
Huh.
And so they, from, beginning to end, essentially, they've cut out the middleman. They had anywhere from steaks to roast. They do their own processing. They've, the whole works. Now, yes, there were those that had the seasonal carbs, like you said, the tomatoes, the cucumbers. There were bee farmers, quote, honey harvesters, had their own honey there. There was a couple different places that also were doing like freeze dried foods that, they had grown their own foods. And I got some gifted to me today. Gonna go make my bacon salad tomorrow. Awesome. Um, and they would raise their own, but then they would freeze dry it. So they had both in their booth. They had what they had grown, but also the aspect of, if you're looking for, food storage aspect. But I would say there was probably 20 plus vendors. So it was a smaller farmers market, but a larger one, if that makes sense, right? The one that's only 30 miles from me, it's a little bit smaller than that. But yeah, this one, I said, had anywhere from chicken that they had processed to eggs, chicken, eggs to beef. I mean, it was a very cool farmers market.
That's fun. Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, we're going to work the land. Like you said, when we were at Hack Your Health, we attended one of this on the main stage was the regenerative farming, and my husband and I attended that, and we ended up talking to two of the vendors that were on stage speaking. One of them, I think his name is Wendell, from Holy Cow, and he sells his meat, his beef and stuff online. Like, you can get it shipped, but it's done here in Texas. And we talked for him over an hour. In fact, I actually left the gentleman, my husband and him, talking, and walked away a couple times because I was like, okay. But it was just neat to dig into that side of things. I think in my personal healing journey, the more food I can grow or buy local or things like that, where I have a better handle on what is in my food that I'm consuming, has evolved into where I'm at today. And we have a beef. We actually bought a cow. It's been a couple of years now. We're still eating off of that cow, and that was pasture raised, grass fed, no antibiotics. Does have it? It wasn't finished with grain at all. Or corn fed. It was out on the pasture. The steaks were tough, but I'm telling you, the first time I had the ground beef, it tasted completely different than what you could buy in the grocery store.
Well, and you've kind of found a way of working around that tough aspect. You've done a little aging of it, or wet aging, I guess, of it. And that's kind of helped with it a little bit. So there's ways, because I've heard people talk about, the fact of grass-fed, grass-finished being tough or being more of like a gamey flavor profile, because they are raised out, on the pasture. And I do feel as though it makes a difference where your beef is sourced, right? Even here in Nebraska, we'll take wild game, for instance, deer. Where I'm at, it tastes different than if I was to go out to western Nebraska, out in the sandhills where they're raised more on like sagebrush, right? That flavor profile in the meat, or even in the fat specifically. But you can marinate it, you can wet age it, and that kind of helps a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. We took to wet aging, and feel free to look that up on the internet. It's very easy to do, because most processed beef, right? There's a hang period where they hang it to kind of cure in a way. And I think each state is different on how long they can do that for. But in our particular case, the cow that we bought and had butchered, this cow went straight from the field to, like, they packaged him. Like, there was no hang time. Um, but again, we wet aged it, and it honestly, wet aging it was a game changer. It turned out really tender and good, and so. But yeah, we're actually still eating off of that cow, which is wild.
Well, and I understand that because we used to get a beef processed every year, but I had 4 kids at home at that point,
Right.
right? And we started to notice that the beef lasts longer, but now we've cut down on the portions that we're getting. So this last time we got just half a beef, um, with 2 kids at home, essentially. Even though our kids are out on their own, we go through a lot of ground beef because which works for us. Many people will say, "Well, I don't want to buy half a beef because it's mostly ground meat." For us, that works. My kids come home and they're like, can we have some hamburger? Sure. We get them in pound and a half packages and they take, 5, 6 packages at a shot. So we go through more of the ground beef. Now the roasts, we'll use those. I'll chop them up and make things or throw them in a pressure cooker. But there's different ways of utilizing some of those other cuts. I will use even the fat that I get with it, right? Or the organs. I really like also for us specifically when we have the beef process, instead of getting it cut into short ribs, we get it beef spare ribs, and then they kind of like break it down for me, right? They take the top layer of the ribs and I'll make that into like stew meat or, chili. It makes really good chili in the wintertime, or you can do a carnivore chili if you want. But I'll make it out of that rib meat. And then that layer of rib fat works really well as, fat trimmings when I'm doing a higher fat approach. So we utilize the whole animal. There's not much of the animal that we don't use.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's been, now my body, I couldn't, right now, I'm not metabolically flexible enough to be able to eat the local honey. But hopefully I will someday, right? Because that has its own health benefits as well. So, do you want to tell the folks what you did today? What you were busy in the kitchen doing today, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. So you're going to hear it here first because I haven't even shared it on my Instagram. But I've taken to looking at expanding into like the sourdough practices. So my family isn't carnivore, let alone, keto. And one of the aspects when you look at products that are on the market that really ends up and bothers me is where can I meet my family in like the middle, right? It's not, we know that the processed foods, we know what, the big food industry is doing to our families, to our health, to us, right? Big food, big pharma, they're all in it together. The tobacco industry that has created the addiction model into creating addictive food substances. But I have taken to creating sourdough. So I do use some of the ancient grains. It's not just, I'm going to go to the grocery store and get an all-purpose white enriched flour, right? I do buy a specific grain or ancient grains, I should say, and I've started making sourdough bread. I use it with my daycare kids too, and just making a better product that I know what's in it. So if you've ever looked up, like, we'll just end up and say a big box store. Most of you know the big retail giant, right? If you look up their sandwich bread and the ingredients, it is crazy the ingredients that go into making bread, right? You wouldn't think that you would have to read every simple basic label, but that's where the food industry gets us in regards of the ingredients. I mean, it's enriched wheat flour, barley flour, um, water, sugar, yeast, soybean oil, salt, monoglycerides, calcium as a preservative, soy lecithin, um, citric acid, green vinegar, wheat gluten, potassium. Guess what's in mine? Flour, water, and salt. And all I do is I feed it every day, I let it ferment, and then I end up and I make bread. Or I actually made some blueberry scones that the daycare kids ended up eating. But I made all sorts of other products, and the scones had blueberries, which were locally sourced. I had, I knew what was in it as far as the ingredients. It didn't have any of these, processed oils that are making us sick. Is it something that I would eat and, be a fan of every day? Absolutely not. If someone is insulin resistant and can't handle carbs, I would not tell them to go and, eat a bunch of sourdough bread. So there comes a time and a place in a person's metabolic health where they maybe can start to cycle in some carbs. I would start with whole food carbs, not necessarily the bread. But for my family that is on, processed food carbs, that is something that I've looked at transitioning over and making a better or a healthier option. And I think that is one of the, other topics that we can chat about tonight is the fact of it doesn't have to be a complete overhaul for many people, as long as they just make some simple steps in overhauling their choices, right? Like I said, for my family, that first step is let's just cut some of these other products out or make a healthier choice. I know you were at your mom's and, we kind of talked about the aspect of swapping, and you had a Thrive box sent up there for you making healthier choices while you were up there. And so it's just, those type of things. It doesn't have to be extreme. I guess that's the biggest thing is getting away from the extremes. And like I said, if I can make a loaf of bread, sure, it took a little bit of, time in kneading the bread and letting it rise, right? But trust me, if I can fit it in my day, pretty much anyone could fit it in their day. Because it's just when you look at foods, there shouldn't be a food group that is necessarily forbidden to eat, right? You'll hear many people say that this is going to kill you or that's going to kill you or, whatever the case may be. And sure, you may need to do an elimination aspect, but I also don't feel like in moderation or for some of those that need the help, telling them that is going to help them. I think, they need an alternative. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah. And one of the things that while I was in Indiana was, and I talked to a couple of my friends and about reading labels. My one girlfriend, her husband was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic about 2 months ago, I think. And he had an A1C of 12. And of course, they threw all kinds of medicine at him. And she called me. And actually, my husband and I both talked to her kind of to give her ideas because she's never had to. I mean, she gets it, but never got to the depths that I have taken myself Um, and so we talked a lot about reading labels and just simple things that most people are not even aware of is how many different names there are for sugar that they hide in the labels. And most people just look at the nutritional value without looking at the ingredients. Like you said, you just read what the white bread contained. And again, things like, you know, well, barley malt, that's a sugar. Um, and you're not going to see things like they're not going to spell sugar out, right? High fructose corn syrup, that's another name for sugar, right? Hydro, let's see, fructose sweetener. I'm trying to come up with some others here. Corn sweetener, corn syrup solids, maltodextrin. There we go. Get that spit out. Malt syrup, fruit juice, caramel, um, evaporated cane juice. Just crazy that people don't realize that those are other names for sugar. So if you are wanting to eliminate, and that was one of the things that I never understood before I went down my healing journey, and I was still looking at the American Diabetes Association. None of this was identified. So I was told by a nutritionist years and years ago that, I could have on a label 15 grams of sugar, and that was okay. And nobody took me down the label reading part of it. And so, and I think that's one of the things when we were at Hack Your Health, was it Dr. Berg that had the pamphlet that you could print on what the difference is between ultra processed foods, and of course your whole foods. And he put it, and you could go on his website, Dr. Berg, BERG. You can actually download that pamphlet that he was handing out for free. You can download it and look at how to read the labels, which was fascinating for the average person who doesn't know how to read those labels. And that's why, you're going down that avenue of what can you feed your family that's a lot better than ultra processed foods, things like that. I mean, I know my parents grew up in Indiana. I mean, they had soybean fields. Things weren't the way they are now back then, right? When because my dad talked about as a kid helping out on the fields and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All of that, right? And now what they do to soybean and the oils that they create off of that, and the process that it goes through, the vegetable oils, the canola oils, things like that. Nobody ever told us that that was bad. And it just takes a short search on the internet to find out how they make these. We call them bad seed oils, right? And again, nobody's told us that. Margarine is not. It's a processed food, believe it or not. So things like that, I always found it interesting. And of course, I've also delved into my products as well, skin products, laundry soap, things like that, that doesn't have the chemicals and the fragrances and things like that. And I think you were the one that told me how you make basically your stain remover. And I immediately went out and bought a squirt bottle and made up my own as well. So I'm not putting that chemicals on my on our bodies as much as possible. I mean, we're gonna, this is synthetic, this top I'm wearing, right? It's got chemicals in it. But at least when I'm washing my clothes, it's a little less. And one of the things I'm very cognizant about is when we're living in our travel trailer where we have a community laundry facility. And thank goodness the folks that run this our RV park are such wonderful people that the night before I do laundry, she goes in and cleans the washers, runs cleaning cycles, vinegar, things like that. So I can come in the very next morning and wash our clothes with less of that. But you know what? I still can smell like the fabric softener, the things on our clothes. That's one of the things I can't wait once we get out on our property is to get my washer and dryer back. My washer and dryer have never had synthetic anything like that put through it. I use dryer balls as my fabric softener, right? As wool dryer balls. But that was a process. I mean, I didn't just wake up one morning and throw everything out the door and go, we're not using any of this, right? I was like, okay, well, I have this and I'm going to use it. I know one of the things in the aromatherapy meeting that you host in the BNC community was you've talked about how you make your own toothpaste.
Yep.
So now I didn't run out and throw away all my toothpaste because I'm a person that likes to stock up, right? So we've slowly worked through the toothpaste, and now I'm transitioning my husband to the more natural toothpaste, but there's an even better way. And I remember my grandmother brushing her teeth the way you do, Becky.
Yep. I just simply take a little I wet my toothbrush, take a little bit of baking soda, and then I'll take essential oils so you can see them over my shoulder there. And then I'll put, a drop of whatever flavor, quote flavor, right, that I want on my toothbrush. Maybe it's orange, maybe it's mint, whatever. And I'll use that to brush my teeth. But my daughter, it's so funny. My oldest daughter sent me a TikTok because let's face it, every child I think is on TikTok nowadays. But she sent me a TikTok in regards of some tallow-based skincare product, and I already had some made. So I took that to her this weekend when we went up there, and it had essential oils in it. So that's, kind of going back to having the cow process and using everything, right? When I cook the fat, I don't discard the fat that's cooked off. I use it to make either with tallow bites, with tallow sticks, which you can scroll back through YouTube and find that video. I'll make with tallow sticks, and just, it's a way to boost fat, but I also use it as skincare product. So I'll take it and I'll whip it and I'll add essential oils to it, and I'll use it like a lotion. Oil pulling, you can do, oil pulling with tallow because it's going to end up in melt once you end up and you put it in the mouth and start swishing it around. So, same thing as coconut oil, but it's an animal based, right? So yeah, just I got into essential oils, and I started to become an advocate about essential oils about 9 years ago. And that's when I kind of started down the whole, what is going in us and on us mindset as far as products or chemicals or the environment that we're exposed to, right? Or being disconnected from because we're putting these barriers between us and the environment. So, yeah, it's when you start to kind of look at or dig a little bit deeper in regards of what you're being exposed to, that lens starts to open up and you start to have aha moments as far as even what you're putting on you making you sick, right? Many people don't have that connection of, oh, you're tired, your hormones are out of balance, you're not sleeping well. That all has to do with what you're eating and what you're consuming and what you're putting on you. So you do need to kind of look at all of the areas. That's why we're beyond the nutrition, is because we don't just focus what's going in our mouth as far as nutrition, but how we're living, breathing, and what we're bathing in addition to just food.
Absolutely. I know one of the searches that I have been on a hunt for is a deodorant, aluminum free. Most people don't know that you should not be putting aluminum right on your body. The cosmetic industry, they don't regulate it like you think they should. When you see something that says fragrance on, your the plugins, the things like that, those are toxins, and people don't realize that. I years ago threw all my candles out that had the scents in them. And well, one thing is my husband cannot handle smells. His mother was like this. They can't handle any smells, and we're talking, the skunk when you're driving down the road, to like I said, that fabric softener smell on clothes, to anything and it'll give him an instant headache. So I've always been cognizant of that, but in my healing journey, it woke me up to even more things. But I have to even be careful with the essential oils, because those have such a strong smell. And even though they're natural, I still have to be super careful with that as well. So the tallow, when you were talking about the tallow, when I went to Indiana, I took a little container of my tallow with me, because I've been getting some dry skin around, the T area of your face. And I was putting, I literally just put tallow on it to help with that dry skin. And my mom said, well, I think it's bleaching your skin. I said, no, it's tallow. It's fat. It's not, well, and I figured out what was causing a lot of my dry skin. So was wearing masks at night, right, to cover my eyes. And it was drying me out around here. So as soon as I stopped using that, I actually, since I've been back from Indiana, I haven't even put any tallow on it, because that's what was causing the irritation. But I know, something so simple, right? Go figure. But that's it. I mean, and like you said, there's companies out there, small companies, which I love to support, you having those tallow products.
Yep. Yeah, there was actually a younger gal that was at Hack Your Health as well, that was just doing a startup.
Yeah.
And I can't think of it. But FOMO,
So mother bow something.
yeah,
It was a play on words.
Mm-hmm. We're both stumped on it, because I can tell you exactly where her booth was. Mother Faux Care.
That's it. Drop that in the chat there.
Yeah, she had amazing products. I'll drop the online store. I feel like we need like some Jeopardy music.
I think she's out of Texas too.
I believe she was, yes. Yeah, like I said, she was a younger girl that was very passionate in regards of what she was starting, and she had amazing products there. So if you're, not someone that wants to create your own products, her name is Jennifer. And yes, she is from Texas. She's 18 years old. She's got anything from the detergents, soaps, cleaners, deodorants, a lot of those great natural alternatives that we're talking about. And like I said, she makes everything handmade, essentially.
Yeah, maybe we
Handcrafted
should
skincare.
reach out. We should reach out to her and see if she'll come on and have a chat with us.
We could.
I will. I'll take that on, Becky. I'll do that. Reach out to her and see if we can get her on. So I think that would be a good conversation to have.
Yeah, and regards of, like I said, just kind of the topic that we're talking about in regards of not only what you eat, but what you put on your skin.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, anyone have any questions? I know we're just kind of chatting away, but I know we've got friends that are watching on Instagram and friends that are watching here. So Twitch, I see you over there too. If you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll do a Q&A.
I don't have anything on my end here, Manin.
I don't see anything either. Everyone's all quiet tonight.
It's the heat.
It is the heat. It is the heat, and it is a true Monday. That's all I will say. I've talked to several people today, and it's a Monday.
It's a Monday. That's funny.
But yeah,
well,
I don't have any questions. So those that have joined us, thanks for jumping in and joining. And those that didn't catch the replay, catch the audio.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially on YouTube here. We don't have sponsors, so helps with the algorithms. We would love to get more of a broader audience on our Healing the Whole Body podcast. We think that what we talk about has some good information. Sometimes, we're just talking, but we're just two women that feel passionate about helping folks. That's why we have the BNC community. Feel free to join us there as well. And that's all I've got, Becky.
Awesome. Well, I shall see everyone over at the BNC community. Speaking of, I've got a meeting over there yet tonight. So once you drop that love for us here, whether it's a like, whether it's a heart over on Instagram, drop that love and join us over at BNC community. Have a wonderful night, everyone. And